Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Let Fear Bounce. I am so glad that you're deciding to spend just a part of your day with myself today and my special guest today, Tamera Norwood. Oh, and by the way, I'm Kim Langling, your host. Welcome. How remiss of me to introduce my own self. Welcome to Let Fear Bounce. And Tamara, as I said, is my guest today. She is an author and a librarian and all kinds of other things. And we're going to get into all of that and see what makes her tick. So, welcome everybody listening in or watching in and tuning in. And Tamara, welcome to Let Fear Bounce.
Thank you so much, Kim. I'm so happy to be here.
Now, I'm going to share a little bit of her bio with you folks. She is a children's author, a librarian, and a former real estate executive. And when others might have been planning their retirement, no, not her. She decided to reinvent her life and follow an old passion that she had, which was writing. Her first book, released in 2021, a children's book titled There's Good All Around, is a gentle book for rough times, reminding the young reader that even when times are hard, there is still good to be found all around us. When she's not dreaming up stories for young people, you'll find her working in libraries, practicing yoga, reading outdoors, and loving on her pets. Tamara, welcome once again to Let Fear Bounce. Now, says you've got pets, so I'm going to jump right into that. What kind of pets do you have? Because I actually have two pet books out, and I love animals. So, what kind of pets do you have?
So ours are all, well, I can't say they're all rescues. One of them just claims squatter's right. But we have a dog. She's part Bichon and who knows what else. And then we have a little cat that she just showed up in our backyard as a kitten at some point. And we had a cat at the time that she liked. And it took about 3 years to tame her. We finally brought her into the house. She won't leave now. We just love her so much. And then the other cat, his name is Pickle. He actually belongs to the neighbors who live, their house backs up to our fence, two houses over. He just kept coming in the dog door, and we would find him all over the house, in the bathroom, on the counter, eating the butter, drinking iced tea. He's never left. And we talked to his owners, and they were like, no, he loves you more. You can have him. So we have Pickle, Smudge, and Barley.
Tickle, Smudge, and Barley. Those are those are awesome names. I love the story of how your cat just said, "You're my family now, whether you want to be or not." I
Yeah,
think animals are awesome.
it took a while for us to get used to the fact that we could find him anywhere, and often what he likes to do is eat a bird under our grandson's bed. But you know what? If you're a member of the family, we're going to take you warts and all.
That's right. And cats, that's kind of like that's what they do. That's their thing, you know?
Hi, the grandson. He's so little.
Yeah, it's always an adventure when you have animals living in your house. That's for sure. That is for sure. All right, so let's dig into it. You are a librarian. How long have you been a librarian for?
About 9 years. So I was in commercial real estate for almost 30 years, either working for shopping center developers or national retailers. And I was always in charge of real estate. And at one point back in 2002, I was between jobs and I was driving my husband crazy saying, hey, let's paint the garage. And he was like, why don't you go back to school? You always said you wanted to be a librarian. And that's all it took. I could only take a class a semester, because I did go back to work right away. And it took me 6 years to get that degree. You have to have a master's degree to actually be a librarian. Not everybody working in a library actually has that librarian designation. I got the degree in 2008, and that is the year the economy collapsed and nobody was hiring librarians. And if they were leaving, they weren't replacing them. So it took me another 9 years to get into the system. And I had to start out volunteering. I worked my way up, and now I'm in charge of 4 libraries in the city of Scottsdale.
Awesome. What a journey.
Yeah, I just it's one of those things where you just say I'm going to do this, and then you do it. You don't think about it. You just jump in. The whole thing about let fear bounce. You just can't say, "Oh, it's too late. I can't redo this." It's
Right.
too late for anything, really.
Now, in your bio, because I didn't share all of your bio, but in your bio it says it was after 60, the age of 60 that you wrote your book. So
Yeah.
share a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So in college, I was an English major. I thought I was going to write the great American novel. But then life got in the way. I went to work. I worked like crazy. I have two children. I raised them. I was a single parent for a while, and the only writing I did was business proposals, legal information for leases, those kind of things. But I was a storyteller. I was constantly telling stories to my kids and then to my grandkids. And finally, I just thought, if I'm going to change everything, if I'm going on this journey to be a librarian, I'm going to put the cherry on the top. I am going to get a book published. So I started writing, probably about the same time that I went to library school. I started writing really dark, brooding short stories for adults. And I got a little bit of traction with those. Some of them were published, and my daughter said, "Why are you writing this? That's not really who you are." But in my mind, I was thinking, well, that's serious writing, right? When it's dreadful and gloomy. And she said, "You tell such good children's stories. Why don't you just do that?" And again, the light went off, and I said, "You're right. I don't know why I'm doing this." So I started writing children's stories, really terrible children's stories. I'm going to be honest with you, because no one starts out writing great stories, and especially picture books. So if you have to think about, it's a complete story in 500 words with a beginning, middle, and end, and with a vocabulary aimed at someone, you generally between the ages of 3 and 8. And it takes so much work to perfect that. You get a little more leeway when you write middle grade novels, which I'm actually working on one right now. But you can tell the story and add the details, but you're not talking about anybody's blue eyes in a picture book. That part of the story is all for the illustrator. So learning how to craft a story, basically it's called flash fiction, right? Just in this little tiny envelope, and then leaving room for the illustrator to tell the rest of the story. It took probably, I'm going to say about 12 years until I got to the point where someone was interested in my book. And we were talking about this book, There's Good All Around.
Mhm.
We talked about it a little bit more. I had applied to an agent, and she responded to me in about 2 weeks, and it was the greatest day of my life, right? So she's interested. She was an editorial agent. She helped me craft this story and get it really great. She tried so hard for 6 months to sell the book to 28 of the top children's literary agencies, and I would get good feedback, but they would say, we really like this, especially the ending, but we have a writer who writes similar, or we're getting ready to publish something similar to that too. So I kept trying, and now, the time is ticking on, and I celebrated my 60th birthday, and finally I realized, you know, if the big publishers already have something similar to this book, or an author who's similar to my writing style, why don't I find a small publisher who has nothing like this? And as luck would have it, because I'm a librarian, I was at an Arizona Library Association event. There was a small publisher there who only published nonfiction for adults and mindfulness and the arts for children. And guess what? My book is about mindfulness. And we clicked, and 2 years later, my book was published.
Awesome.
Yeah.
See, it's always fun to hear how people's journeys, how you got to where you are, how that book got published. And you were talking about all the different things and aspects of creating a children's book. I don't think people, non-writers, realize, and I think writing a children's book would be harder, more difficult than to write, a nonfiction or a fiction book. I've sat down and thought, I have all kinds of neat little stories in my head, but then you sit down and you're writing the story out, and I'm going, this sounds stupid. How am I going to keep this under, 500 words or less? And who's going to draw? Who's going to make the pictures? Who's going to create? So there's so much involved, and you have to be really succinct, but you've got to be able to catch that child's attention and the parents' attention because they're the ones who are reading it.
That's the most important part. The parent is purchasing the book, and they're the
Right.
reading it. So it's got to be entertaining or engaging or heart melting for the reader as well as the child. So there's quite a balancing act that goes into children's books, but I love a challenge, and I feel like I'm in the perfect niche.
And I think it's awesome. I think it's wonderful because there is definitely a specific skill set to writing good children's books. I sincerely believe that because you can't just sit down and do it. I guess is what I'm trying to
It
say.
looks so simple. It really does. And like I said, for about 10 years, I wrote terrible children's books because I thought, well, this is so simple. Who couldn't do this, right?
Right.
I started going to writing conferences. I started taking seminars at local writer studios. And little by little, and would have conversations with editors and agents who would be kind enough to send me information back, telling me why they were rejecting my book, right? Those rejections are so important. And first of all, if they respond at all, what an honor,
Oh,
right?
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and and it took me a while because I was working full time. I have a day job and I do this in my spare time. Um, but I finally learned how to craft a story that hit all the notes that we just talked about. And you mentioned something about who would illustrate the books. So when you go through the traditional publishing route, you have no say in who the illustrator is going to be, unless you're somebody like Jane Yolen, who's published 800 books or something. It's just a surprise to you what the illustrations are going to look like. You have to trust that the editor at the publisher's house knows their job, and they can see, even if you can't, what the illustration should look like. So, for instance, if I could just show you this book again,
Hmm.
when the publisher told me the illustrator was a graphic collage artist, I thought, oh no, it's going to look like bits of paper cut out, and I didn't really understand. But I will tell you, I feel like the illustrations, like I had no idea what they were going to look like. And this is my favorite page. When I opened it up, I started crying. I just thought it was the
That's
most,
beautiful.
the illustrator and I have never met. She lives in Italy. It's my dream one day to have lunch with her in her hometown.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
But it's the magic of I'm writing the text, but the pictures really sell the book. I mean, we have to be honest as authors and say, yeah, I wrote language that touches someone or catches someone's attention. But the illustrations tell more of the story than you even imagine. So it's an important collaboration, but if you are thinking of going the traditional route, unless you are professionally trained as an artist, don't even send sketches, send nothing. If your niece is an artist, then nothing. Generally, they won't get looked at.
See, a lot of folks probably don't realize that if
Yeah,
you are traditionally published, they provide the illustrator and you don't really have a whole lot of say in it.
you don't have a say in anything, not the font size, not what the cover is going to look like. But that's not my job. That's a
Right.
design team's job, and I don't have a design background. So you just trust, and great things come out of it.
And those, from what you just showed, and they're so soft.
Yeah, yeah.
That
That's
was my first impression. Those are soft pictures to look at.
the message of the book is soft too. So the title is "There's Good All Around," and this book came about by a conversation I overheard in the library during the pandemic, and I just thought the world must seem horrible to small children right now, even if they don't understand what this epidemic is. They know the people around them are stressed. They know things have changed. They can't see their friends. As an
And
adult,
everybody's wearing a mask.
right, you can't see any
How
emotion,
confusing.
right? So what I wanted to convey to children was, sometimes bad things happen in a day. But if you think about all the good things that happen in that day too, does that one bad thing overshadow those good things? And the nice thing is, the things that we really need, the best things, they're free, they're always around us, and they never leave us. The moon always provides a night light. Your friends and family are always around you. The little things that we don't consider to be really treasures in our lives, because one bad thing, one bad word, one bad mood can throw us off for the whole day. And so the message for children, and really for the adults reading the book too, is we're not encumbered by the bad things that happen. They happen and they leave, but the good things, we are encumbered with those. They never leave us.
What an awesome message. Yeah.
Yeah.
To be grateful for what you have.
Mhm.
And I know that that's hard. that is hard for folks when you are in a dark spot, whether it's children or adults. That
Mhm.
is hard. But if you practice that, and I do that, you wake up in the morning, three things that I'm grateful for. Three. And it might just be I'm grateful that I woke up, that I can go downstairs and make myself a fresh cup of coffee, and then I can take my dog for a walk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
it could be
good.
different every day. I'm grateful that I am able to have bread in my cupboard so I can make toast for breakfast.
Yep.
All these things we take so much for granted, I guess.
Yeah.
And we forget to be grateful for those things like you mentioned that they're there. The moon. The moon
Yeah.
provides a nightlight. How often do we even think about it? Me, I'm outside all the time, doesn't matter what time of day or night, and I'm always thankful for that stuff. But that's me because I enjoy being out there and I'm thankful for all the leaves and the grass, and all of that stuff. But yeah, what a beautiful message that the book is providing for kids and their parents.
Well, I will tell you, getting to that point where you can recognize that message that's in that book, it doesn't just it's not always organic to people, right? It's
Right.
some study, and I think you, as you just said, you always feel that way, but surely there were times when you didn't feel like that.
Oh yeah, no, I do now, but I didn't always.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
For me, that turning point was when I found yoga. I had been a trained dancer as a kid. I thought yoga was, just hoodoo and, just silly things. But by the time I was 60, I couldn't do the things that I used to do. I needed exercise, but I needed to slow down. The beauty of going to yoga is not the stretching and the poses, it's the philosophy. And learning those mindful techniques through yoga has literally changed my life. I'll be honest with you, because I used to be one of those people that suffered from, I would have a negative loop going in my head all the time,
Mm.
of the things that I should have done, I should not have done, I could have done. And it was just constant. And being hypercritical of myself. So I, from that study, yeah, I feel healthier in my body, but my mind is so much healthier than it used to be. You talk about feeling grateful. That is the thing that I'm the most grateful for.
And when we're at ease in our mind, our physical health follows. Because it's all works. Well, this, it all works together. If you feel stressed all the time, you're gonna become ill,
Right? Yeah.
physically ill. I've been there, done that. I have the t-shirt
And it drains
and
your
the
creativity.
coffee mug and the hat and all that goes with it.
That stress, that worry, that drains your creativity too. And
Oh,
being able
yeah.
to get to that space really made me know that I did not need to be afraid that people would be critical of me, because here I am trying to write at 60, and or actually getting published at 60. And I still plan to have more books published too. I did have a second book under contract, and then the publisher decided to, and this is one of the realities of going through traditional publishing. A bigger project fell in their lap, and mine got moved to the back, and the other one moved forward. I don't know if that second book will be published with this publisher, but I'm still going. I submit short stories I just submitted one to a magazine, the largest children's magazine in the UK, called Storytime. I submit poetry all the time. I've had some success in these things, but um, my next big goal is to have a middle grade novel published, and I'm halfway there. And I was so happy because I was accepted into a pretty prestigious writers workshop in Big Sur for February of 2025. I had submitted the first 10 pages of that middle grade novel, and that was what I was able to get entry with that. So I'm very excited about that
Oh,
too.
congratulations. That's exciting.
I'm excited about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing because I like how you're continually learning,
Yeah.
continually. And it's not just because you're a librarian.
Nope.
When you're a writer, I was just talking to another person earlier today, and she's not an author, but she promotes authors. And we were talking about how on her end, she's constantly learning each day something new from her authors.
Yeah.
and her authors are constantly learning. As an author myself, I learn something new every day, at least at the minimum each week, something new about the process or about me as a person. And then I'm like, oh, I I started writing a slightly different way, and I'll be like, oh, that feels so much more natural now. You know, I don't. You have to. I don't know. I'm trying to. What am I trying to get to? When you're writing and you find your own personal groove, it can change, and it doesn't have to make you nervous. As I'm a certain season in my life, I've noticed that my writing has changed because I see the world differently as well. So
Yeah.
has that been the case for you? Well, you got published after 60, and you've always wanted to write, but for various reasons, it didn't happen until, you didn't get published till after you were 60. Did your thought process and all the writing for magazines and things like that, have you noticed a change in how you write?
Oh, absolutely. Um, as I mentioned before, I had a conceived idea that great writing was serious and deep and it had tragedy in it. No, great writing elevates the reader. It either teaches them something new, it gives them a new mindset, it provides entertainment and enjoyment, but it gives them something that they can take with them. I can think of a lot of I used to love ghost stories when I was a kid. I couldn't tell you one of those, but I remember every great children's book that I've read, in libraries and other times. What This is a little bit different than the question that you asked, but one thing that I did want to touch in on is something I call my Renaissance year. So the year leading up to the publication of my book, right? I had been working and working, and I'm learning the ropes, but I had no idea all the ins and outs of the publishing world and what it would take to promote the book, right? So your publisher publishes the book and they do some advertising, but as you know, Kim,
It's
it really is on the writer to market the book.
a full-time
So
job.
I was never on Instagram or Facebook. I didn't want to be. All of a sudden, I'm finding out I can't publish you unless you have a following. So get busy. So I jumped into social media. I learned how to make a website, right? I'm not a techie by any stretch of the imagination, but it's no different than, following a car manual or reading a cookbook, right? You study the information, you work it out, you make mistakes along the way, and finally you get perfection. So I think I have a pretty lovely web page. I had to create a professional email, which because I didn't want to spend a lot of money and have someone else do it for me. Same thing. I figured out how to make the string of code. Do I know anything about coding? Not one thing. But I followed the directions. I figured it out. The year before that publication date, if you think of Renaissance as an enlightenment or an awakening, all of a sudden I realized, wow, I'm relevant, not just to myself, to the social standards of the day, all of the electronics, all of the things, and that goes back to I couldn't be afraid. I couldn't say I don't know anything about this.
Hmm.
Don't publish my book because I'm not going to go on social media. No, I wanted that book. I wanted something bad enough that I had to become enlightened and more aware of the things around me. So that year was such a change for me in my life. And it sounds so funny when I say it because here I am, 59 at that point, learning and not just a little bit at a time. I mean, in great leaps and bounds, all of the things that I needed to learn to be able to approach editors and agents. I did have an agent for a while, but the questions that she asked me, like when I was talking about my raw material for my book, I didn't know it was called a manuscript. I thought that had something to do with movies, right? Just everything that I had to learn, all of the knowledge that I had to gain in that one year. I can't even explain. I feel like I'm on a honeymoon, actually. You know, it's just exciting to me and I'm looking forward to learning the next thing.
And it's interesting because when the beginning of the pandemic, I lost my job, and that's when I decided I'm going to do my own thing. Now's the time, if not when. So everybody was stuck at home. So I decided this is what I'm going to do. And like you're saying, I learned so much in that first year and was attending writers conferences. And a lot of times, when you go, they offer you the option of actually talking to an agent or doing a pitch. You get like 11 minutes and that's it. And they have a timer on the desk. And at that 11 minute, they're like, done, whether you're in the middle of a sentence or not. I found those so educational and rewarding. And even if the ones that I had the opportunity to talk to, they said, we love the concept, but it's not for us right now. Their feedback was amazing. And again, that was learning, you know. So I guess all of that learning, and you have to kind of have a thick skin too, a bit. To you have to be open to accepting constructive feedback because there's not a single writer out there that's a perfect writer, you know,
Your words aren't precious. You have to be able to say, it's okay if somebody else doesn't like them. It's
because
okay if
everybody's not your reader.
that's right. Yes.
Yeah. You know what I found that's helpful to me and I actually enjoy doing, and I've shared this before and people are like, "Really?" There are little contests, and you can find them everywhere online if you look. And I found one that I regularly 2 or 3 times a year submit to. It's a small fee, like I think $29, something like that. And if you can also add, I think another 12 or $15 on to get a professional critique done. And I always ask for the critique. I've never won any of these contests, um, but I don't go into it for that. I am actually going into it for the critique. And they will send it back. You get it a few weeks later, and it's line by line, word by word. They've ripped it apart and said, absolutely love this. My best one was, this made me cry. I cannot believe that you made me cry. But
Wow.
she started it out, you made me cry. No one makes me cry. But And then she ripped it apart, literally line by line through the whole short story. And I was not offended or hurt in any way. I was enthralled going, "Oh, why didn't I think of writing it like that? Oh, she's right. Well, of course she's right. That's her job." But, I find that I like doing that because that has been one of the most helpful things to me is having a professional editor just rip my stuff apart.
Right. So going back to the message of my book, she said one bad thing, but look at all the other great stuff that was in it. We get so hung up on one negative comment, one dirty look, one person in a bad mood who cuts in front of you at the grocery store, right? But look at all the good stuff that was in there.
Add your own butt. You would say, oh, that person just cut me off. But it is an absolutely beautiful blue sky, sunny day today.
Yeah.
Yeah, add your own butt, folks. Another t shirt, coffee mug, baseball hat for you. Add your own butt.
I love it.
Oh my gosh, time has flown, Tamara. Oh, I can't believe that the time is almost up. I ask all of my guests, please, share with where folks can find you, your book, all your good stuff, anything you might have coming up. Share all of that right now.
Oh, so you can always find my book online, either through the publisher, Small Tooth Dog Publishing Group, or you can go to Amazon. You can order it through Barnes and Noble. There's all kinds of places that you can find it. Any independent bookstore will be able to, if they don't have it in stock, they'll be able to get it for you.
Is it
Oh,
in library? Is it in libraries?
it's in certain libraries. So here's the other thing about, even though I'm traditionally published, the publisher did not pay for a professional review of the book through Kirkus or Publishers Weekly or anything. Most libraries will not buy books that have not been um, professionally reviewed because they only have so much money and they have to get the biggest bang for the buck. So it is in some libraries, not every library. If you want to recommend it to your library, I would be most appreciative. But you know, my goal is to have 10 of my books on library shelves around the world. So keep checking.
There you go. And there's no reason why you can't reach that goal.
I That's how I feel.
Exactly, exactly. And I also ask all of my guests as we round out and get ready to close up this show, I ask all of my guests to toss out a nugget of hope to the listeners, something they can tuck away and carry with them for the rest of the day. So, what would your nugget of hope for the listeners be today?
So, my nugget of hope is ask for everything. You don't get anything you don't ask for. Ask for everything. And then if you don't hear yes the first time, ask 4 more times. Just ask in a different way. It's amazing how many times we get nothing because we're afraid to ask. Just ask.
That is perfect. And as a marketer, which is my background, sales and marketing, one of my mentors years ago said, when you're out there doing your ask, which is what you do for my job at the time, expect to ask at least 40 times and you may get one yes.
Yeah,
So keep that in mind. It's never time wasted.
never.
Just keep asking. And along the way you're learning stuff and you're meeting new people and you know, but dot dot dot. You got to know, but look at the person you got to meet,
That's right. Yeah.
you
And
know?
I mean, that connection is going to open a door someplace else either. So
And you have no idea when that connection might swing back around in your realm. Could be 2 weeks or 6 months. It's amazing how things work and things play out and roll out, I think, just as they're meant to in the time that they're meant to.
I agree.
Yeah.
Even if
Tamara, thank you so much for being my guest today on Let Fear Bounce. This has been a true pleasure. Thank you.
it's my pleasure.
And everybody out there listening and tuning in, thank you so much for spending a bit of your time because we know it's precious. Each Wednesday, new episodes go up. This is Kim Langling, the host of Let Fear Bounce. Everybody be well, stay well, and above all, be blessed.
Take care.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of Let Fear Bounce. Your time is precious, and I am so grateful that you chose to spend just a small part of it with myself and my guest today. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss our weekly nuggets of hope and inspiration. And remember, folks, let fear bounce because you've got this. So until next time, folks, keep your light shining bright.